to rebels speak and be encouraged. And wow, I've just been spending some time really thinking about pursuing God in the midst of injustice, and how I've been thinking about Titus. When Titus goes to Jerusalem, Luke doesn't mention him, and Titus, unlike Timothy has Jewish roots. I believe it's a Greek father and a Jewish mom, but I could have that switched. But Titus is fully Greek. And thinking of all the ways that God used Titus, because Paul has such deep prejudices, they're just a part of who he is. They're being reworked, but there's times when you see in Paul so much clarity of kind of when things, for Paul, freedom is very powerfully present. But when freedom gets in the way of truly interested people finding God, then Paul very quickly turns down the freedom. So he's not wanting a lot of kind of social oddness per his understanding of that, right? Per his view and per his idea on that. He's wanting the church to not be, he's not looking for a rebellious institution that's marked by its rebellion in such a way that the walk to shake hands with faith in Paul's mind is a hard and difficult walk. And it's interesting kind of just thinking that through, because there's things he's super happy to fight for. Super, I mean, he's super happy to fight for Gentiles never, ever having to get circumcised. That circumcision is a thing not necessary. Circumcision is related to the law. It's defining of the law. Even though in the Old Testament we're told it's defining of the promise, Paul sees it as defining of the law and not something asked at all. Like it's a bad, he's pretty convinced that the person that peddles circumcision is doing so for financial gain. Paul sees it that way. But then there's other ways where, as the church is growing, he doesn't want it marked by kind of gross, meaning large, right? Just real large differences. He doesn't want to look at a church that doesn't look like the culture it's living in. And that part of Paul's kind of, I don't have any conclusions on it. I've just been thinking a lot about it, about when our way of worship, our way of faith sets, it's too difficult. It makes the path too difficult. But when then it so easily becomes something that it was never meant to be, that it gets in alignment and agreement with belief systems that are hurting to lots of people. Like, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to ask the Gentile population, who, by the way, are responding to the signs and wonders that Paul works in and to the proclamation that Paul speaks. It doesn't work to ask that of them. And it's something I think we come to different conclusions. But in that, in that meandering moment there, I just kept thinking about Titus, how Luke doesn't mention him, and we know about him more. We know he's there because Paul's very proud when he's writing the Gentiles that are kind of now embracing, right, more rules. Rules make us feel so good. And he's like, who's bewitched you? And, I went there with Titus, and no one asked Titus to be circumcised. And then it is interesting because Timothy is circumcised, Timothy who is Jewish, and that is, I think, a different moment where Paul's trying to help James. They're different. Like, that would really, those two experiences, I think, kind of capture the trickiness of Paul, because he's going to help James. He's not going to work against fellow brothers and sisters. I believe that to be true for Paul. But he's also not He's not going to serve any traditionalism that is rooted in the tradition and not the experience of Jesus Christ. And Paul kind of works that out. He does. Now, where I'm going with this today doesn't seem to have anything to do with that, but it's about in the midst when we bump into prejudice and the person who's prejudiced does not yet see it. Okay. And we live in a day and age that would just say righteousness really reveals it because things have been so slow to change. And I'm not against revealing. But I also would just always encourage us to move very close to Christ. Move very close to Christ, because there's things that would move us towards them, the fruit of which is no good. This is why Paul, very much in the book of Titus, is encouraging Titus to be confident, but also to not work in a way that, really, I think it's fair to say, don't work in a way that makes it hard for people to come to know Christ. And I think there's a lot. I really do. I think it's a very exciting time. I think God is working in so many different pockets of reality. And God's able to do that. God's able to work in divergent pockets of reality. And it seems like things are working against one another, and they're not. Because we're all growing, right? It says that we'll grow into the head. That we're the different parts of the body and we're growing. And I believe that there's just, I feel like a sustained stretch in all of our lives that has us hungering for more of God. Just, God, I need more of you. And that is what led me today to Psalm 84 from David, where, it's not from David, it's a psalm of the descendants of Korah, to be accompanied by a stringed instrument. But it is familiar. And it's about getting in God's presence and feeling God's goodness in the midst of whatever you're yearning for, whatever you're wanting to see, whatever you feel called to bring forth into this world. And most likely you feel called to bring forth something into this world. It will be a fight. It will be difficult. Something that our family has said forever, were it not difficult, it would exist already. If you are pulling something into being that is not yet, that will not be easy. That will not be easy. The structures of culture alone will defy what you're seeking to do. But it's so worthwhile. I want to say that. It's so very, very worthwhile. So very, very worthwhile. So here's Psalm 84. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Yahweh Almighty. Like there's something about run into God's beauty, run into God's dwelling place, and Christ has opened that up so wide for us. That Christ within us, the hope of glory, run into that captivating presence of Yahweh Almighty, the love of Yahweh Almighty. I long, yes, I faint with longing. This is that desperation. Never lose your desperation for God. Never let your desperation for the things of this world lessen your desperation for and longing for God. Because in the end, they'll no longer satisfy. The only satisfaction, genuine satisfaction, is in the presence of God that leads us into the, wow, I just feel like God's leading you. I want to say that, leading you into places to set captives free. And sometimes we can grow so consumed with the captive being set free that we lose the light, and we lose the love, and we lose the perspective that longing for God grants us. We lose then the authority, and we lose then the power, and we end up kind of sweeping the floor, just meaning dealing with the tasks at hand versus being in that place of intimacy where we can hear God whispering to us new protocol, new ways, new means of salvation, new storylines. I long, yes, I faint with longing to enter the courts of Yahweh with my whole being, body, and soul. I will shout joyfully to the living God. I want to say, open up your mouth and open up your voice. It's 2022, the year of the voice. Really speak out. Find a spot, park your car. Really exercise walking, using your voice. There's something about our voice shouting out joyfully to the living God. That's saying the place that this yearning of my heart, there's a yearning in my heart that's just felt captive for all of my existence. Okay, it's just like, wow, God, there's this yearning, and I can't even name it. It's had some seasons of not being so loud, but it's gotten very loud again. And I just thank you that I can go and I can shout to the living God. And it's not even like there's something wrong with this. I just don't even know, like there's this yearning, and I believe it's a key, but I just don't know what keyhole to put it in, right? What door to open. And I can go and I can shout joyfully to the living God and say, God, I thank you that as you created me, you created to me unto that, I believe it's teleos, unto that end. I'm created unto an end. And the yearnings of my being, the yearnings of my soul are not unto frustration, but unto achievement. And that might be singing and song, that might be prayer. I really don't know. But I believe that it's not elusive. And my yearnings don't hold me captive. They're there to captivate my heart unto God. They're not there to silence me. They're there to capture my little life, small life here on earth, and know that I'm going to take whatever this yearning and desire in me is and connect it, right? Just speak it into the living God. I'm going to speak the dreams and desires of my heart for a world that's different than the world I see. And I'm going to speak it in this captive state to the one, to the one, to the one. Okay. My whole being and body and soul, I will shout joyfully to the living God. Even the sparrow finds a home there. There's a home for me in you, God. There's a home where I am at home. Ooh, it's joyous. And the swallow builds her nest and raises her young at a place near your altar. All of creation is safe in your presence, God. Oh, Yahweh Almighty, my King and my God, how happy are those who can live in your house, always singing your praises. God, in you my disappointment is swallowed. That's how genuinely good. It's not denial. It's extreme presence. It's presence that has within it the capacity to sing right back at me, to speak right back into my loneliness, anxiety, expectation, hurt, unfamiliarity, all those things. God can sing right back. Fill my lungs, right, with his own voice, with God's own voice. Expectation, God can sing deep into the expectations and the longings. And when God sings into them, then they overflow in delight, meaning, and purpose. They're reassured of their importance. Happy are those who are strong in Yahweh, who set their mind on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Okay, for us, a pilgrimage to Jerusalem is God's full realm of authority, the fullness of God's presence within all of creation. When they walk through the valley of weeping, it's a lot to weep about. There's a lot we can say not quite right. There's a lot fully distorted. There's a lot lying in the ashes, in ruin. But it's not where it's going to be for forever. And our prayers get to engage, our heart and our mind get to engage. We get to engage with the land upon which we find ourselves, in which we find ourselves. When they walk through the valley of weeping, it will become a place of refreshing springs. I want to speak that into the longings of your heart. I want to speak that into the places for which you're desperate for God to flourish. Your tears, like Hannah, that's what as I was praying for today, what first was there for me was Hannah weeping unto something that had never been before, unto a prophet. You can't have an age of a king without a prophet, someone to speak truth so powerfully. When they walk through the valley of weeping, it will become a place of refreshing springs. Your tears are giving birth to refreshing springs, where pools of blessing collect after the rain. I just love that image, just that in and of itself. That our tears, think of tears falling. Think of refreshing springs to the dry land. Think of pools of blessing that have collected after the rain. Think of all of that. Think of all of that. And never let the enemy get you to think of despondency, because presence, God is with you. He weeps with those who weep. He laughs with those who laugh. That's why we're told, weep with those that weep, laugh with those who laugh. Step into the inclinations and longings of the heart. And here it is, they will continue to grow stronger, and each of them will appear before God in Jerusalem. There's a place for those in isolation. There's a place for those weeping for the time and the day in which they live, for the things that are out of proportion, for the things that aren't right, for the things that have been wrong for so long. Weeping there, knowing that refreshing springs, right, that righteousness rains down, and what righteousness and salvation are the response. They will continue to grow stronger, and each of them will appear before God in Jerusalem. O Lord God Almighty, hear my prayer. Listen, O God of Israel. A single day in your courts is better than 1,000 anywhere else. I just feel, don't be allured to the impermanent. Don't be trusting of the seemingly satisfying, and the whole world saying, no, this is so delicious, it's so satisfying, and it's just same old rage, same old anger, same old disappointment, same old self-righteousness, just same old, nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes, the most cynical book by a very cynical, privileged person. No, don't get caught up. Don't get caught up. Don't let the enemy whisper and say God's withholding kingdom, God's withholding purpose and meaning. This yearning in you is just the reality of a world that's full of disappointment. Nope. Silence that mocker. Be silenced, you mocker. I'm in the goodness. I'm in the presence of God, and it's so good. I'm in the presence of the one that made me with the yearnings that live in me since I was very young. I wanted this world to not hurt quite the way it does. And it's God's grace that despondency is, I've had seasons, but never been the final word. I'm so thankful. I can delight in God's goodness that doesn't diminish the yearning of my heart. I'm super thankful for that. I'm super thankful that my God is not like the dad of Rudolph that wanted to cover that nose. Wanted to say, that's unseemly, get over it, life's just like this. Suck it up, whatever that is. A single day in your courts is better than 1,000 anywhere else. I know where I want to be when my heart sees things that are worthy of my heart's weeping. I would rather be a gatekeeper in the house of my God than live the good life in the homes of the wicked. Oh. However you see that right now, there's a lot out there to allure us, and it looks genuine and good. And I think sometimes it probably has a lot of genuine and good, but deep in that genuine good is so much lack. Because the enemy just, I believe, however you picture selfishness and the spirits that fuel it, loves to make luck look worthy of pursuit. For Yahweh God is our light and protector. It's a great combination. We can see and we're safe. I can see hope and I can see salvation, and I can speak into situations. I can voice God's goodness in the midst of a world that speaks unworthiness over a whole bunch of people. God is our light and protector. He gives us grace and glory. That's what Paul is saying, don't lose your grace. Don't lose your glory, don't lose your grace. And we can imagine that a little differently than he. We get to. But here it is. For the Lord Yahweh God is our light and protector. He gives us grace and glory. I want to speak grace and glory over your determination. The things that you are fighting for. I want to speak grace and glory. Grace, God's gift, God's presence, that's grace. God's nearness, singing over you, counting your hairs, God's grace, God's with you-ness, and then again, God's glory, God's presence. They're both God's presence. God's song singing in and through you. God's song singing in and through you. No good thing will Yahweh withhold from those who do what is right. That the enemy really tells us God withholds. God withholds salvation. God has such a delightful plan of salvation that's working right now all over the globe. And it says no good thing. I love that. No good thing will Yahweh withhold from those who do what is right. And post the cross, that's different, isn't it? No good thing will God withhold from those of us in whom his Spirit lives. Those of us who are a part of that, right? We're in God and God's in us, and the Holy Spirit, just that dance of relational beauty and joy is in us, and we add to that, the Spirit. O Yahweh Almighty, happy are those who trust in you. That's my word today, thinking of Titus. Happy are those who trust in you, that Titus found happiness, that Titus didn't need the approval of Luke, perhaps, and maybe I'll get to heaven and Luke's like, what were you talking about? But I don't mind. Like, we're happy without you seeing. We're happy without your approval. Christ in me is the hope of glory. And I love when I bump into others. I love it. There's joy. I love marriage that way. I love children that way. I love my immediate biological family that way. I love my friends that have been so faithful over the years, as I just have had to kind of work through parts of me that are not always relationally well and whole. And through all that, there's been this presence of God that sustained me through disappointment, sustained me through confusion, sustained me through deception and self-deception, sustained me through a lot of loneliness because of my own brokenness. I just praise God that my legacy is not a legacy of disappointment, because I think it could have been. But my legacy is a legacy of fulfillment and knowing how to worship God in the wilderness, in the desert, singing songs. That was another image this morning. Singing songs in the night. There's a lot of imagery of night that's so beautiful. Yeah, there's just such beauty tonight. And then I was thinking about that. Songs that are sung in the night, the perspective's so different. And then there's songs that are sung in jail cells. That's different. And there's sometimes where we've been told, sing in the jail cell, and I think that can work. But there's also the song that's inside of us that doesn't care. It's not held captive anywhere. So that the worship isn't unto an end. It's that in me is a song that just keeps singing. Just keep singing. It just knows the nearness and the dearness, and it sings. It sings. It sings. And whatever that song does in a jail cell, it does. And whatever that song, the beauty that song adds to the beauty of night, it does that. And the beauty of the day, it does that. Right now, we're powerless. So I don't know when this will be posted. I've been having some posting power issues, but this song, in the midst of the generators, I don't know, I just felt I don't know, I just feel like I just want to say, God bless you. Christ is near you. Christ has a song he's singing into you. You have a song you're singing into Christ. Together you are, in the midst of that Trinity with the Father. and all the strength and the goodness and the wisdom and the compassion of the perfect Father. Be blessed, be encouraged.